Good afternoon. It is exactly 1 o'clock. I can't believe we're right on time today. Welcome to our HubLive. Welcome to the Smart Hub. And I'd like to introduce you to an amazing guest today, Meryl Johnston, and she's joining us from Bean Ninjas from the Gold Coast. And we're going to discuss an extremely important topic. I know a lot of people are in service-based businesses and they would love to productize that in some way and to go from operator to business owner. So that's exactly what Meryl is going to share with us on how to do today. And she's sharing with us from her very own personal experience, because she has taken this journey herself. And she just mentioned before that she's got lots of stories to share on what to do as well as what not to do. So welcome and join us here for lessons on scaling a productized service and freeing yourself from your business. Hey, Meryl, how are you?
I'm good, thanks. It's great to be here. And this is a favorite topic of mine. I know that it can be a challenge for service businesses, particularly the business owner, if they've come from a technical background and they feel like the service that they're selling is their craft, their trade, their profession. And so they have part of their identity tied up in that. And how do they transition out of delivering those services to acting more like a business owner and thinking about scaling and marketing rather than being involved in all aspects of the service delivery?
So tell us a little bit about your background, because that's exactly pretty much your story summarized. Was that right? Tell us, what do you do? Tell us about your business.
The business that I run now is called Bean Ninjas, and I've been running that for about 6 years. Prior to that, I was an accountant. So I worked at BDO, which is a mid-tier international firm, qualified as a chartered accountant, did my 10 years in industry working as an accountant, but I always wanted to run a business. And the transition for me from leaving full-time employment was not to go straight into Bean Ninjas, the business I'm running now, was to go and start a consulting business. And I think doing freelancing or consulting is quite a common transition from full-time employment into working for yourself. And for me, that was a great transition. It meant that I was able to replace my salary and have a bit more flexibility and freedom to go surfing, which is what I wanted, and to travel. But as I ran that business, I realized it was hard to replace myself. It was hard to build a team around what I was doing. A lot of it really was based around my accounting systems expertise. And it was then that I came across this term, productized service. I learned about how other service business owners were scaling their businesses. And that really caused me to rethink what criteria did I have around a business. And I realized I wanted to build something where it had global potential, it was scalable, and it wasn't me that was going to be delivering the service, which meant that it needed to be something that was quite defined, that could be repeated over and over. I wanted to build a brand rather than having my name in the title of the business. And there was some other criteria around wanting to have recurring revenue. So every month knowing that there was money coming in and wanting to have systems and scale. So that's a little bit of the backstory and what I wanted in the next business, which is what I tried to build with Bean Ninjas.
So how did you make that transition? What did you do? Tell us, how can someone go from service-based business to product-based business? International market, scalable processes and procedures in place so that you know that you have, and recurring revenue is so important. So tell us, share with us your secret.
The way I did it was to start a completely new business. So I had the consulting business and I started a completely new brand and business with a business partner. And from the beginning, we tried to shape it as a productized service, or trying to package services into a product. And we were selling, so Bean Ninjas now is positioned as e-commerce growth accountants. But at the time when we first started, we did fixed fee bookkeeping. And we just had 3 packages on our website. So we tried to think about how can we package this up in a way that someone could see a price, a set of deliverables, and then buy it, similar to buying a product. So the way I did it was to create a separate business. But I think you could also do it by just looking at the suite of services and the problems that you solve for your existing service business customers, and then think about how could you create a product or productized service out of an element of that. So if you were running a design and branding business, you might be able to create a product that is just around the initial conception of a logo, or there's probably lots of examples of it. You might have a fixed fee to create a website with a clear set of deliverables. There's lots of very many ways that you could choose to do that.
So tell us about when you are a technician or really good at what you do, and you're moving into like thinking about how you can productize that. How do you look at all of your skills and go, okay, so this is the little bit that I should be focusing on to move forward with?
Interesting question. So in my case, I was an accountant, and then I was selling bookkeeping services, which is a subset of the accounting skill set. But I would reframe it another way and think about, what do your customers want, and what can I have other people deliver that doesn't require anything of me, of my technical skill set? I know people that run productized services with something like video editing, and a friend of mine that runs that, he's not a video editor. He wouldn't know how to do that, but he saw that there was an opportunity in the market that YouTubers need regular video editing. And so he hired video editors and then built a productized service around that, where they pay a set monthly fee for a series of videos. So it might be you as the technician, but I think what's key is, how can other people deliver this to a consistently high standard, or the standard that you're promising to customers, in a repeatable way?
So there's another thing that I think is really interesting about going from service-based business to product-based business, and that's maybe managing staff or getting like a team to deliver some of your services. That might be something different, but also your customer acquisition will look a bit different, because when you're in a service-based business, there's very much this one-to-one relationship with your customers or your clients, where when you're in a product-based business, that doesn't function in the same way. So can you tell us a little bit about, maybe that part of the question first? So how do you then get customers, number one, and then secondly, how do you recruit a team, and how do you go about managing that team?
Yeah. On the acquiring customers side, in the early days of Bean Ninjas, it was still very much relationship based, because our brand was unknown and I didn't know much about digital marketing. So I was doing the hustle in the first few years of building a lot of relationships, adding value, and through networks, that's how we found our first set of customers. But that's not scalable, and we needed a lot more customers to achieve the same revenue. When we weren't doing high price consulting, we were selling much cheaper monthly retainers. And so we started with digital marketing, specifically content marketing, the day we launched Bean Ninjas, and I just learned about it as we went. And it was my background, but we started a blog, we started an email list, and we've continued with that for almost 6 years now. And SEO is actually one of our primary sources of new customers outside of referrals. I think we're in the finance industry, so there's still it's a trust-based purchase, and a lot of our work does come through referrals, but we've invested in building digital marketing channels as well. And I like to think about channels that we own. And so we own our email list, whereas if we were on something like Facebook or running Facebook ads, we're not necessarily owning all of that, or it's easy for it to be taken away because someone else, Facebook, owns the platform. So we have experimented a little bit with that, and definitely those strategies might work for some businesses, but with us, it's really been content, specifically around writing useful articles about accounting, but also around productized services and building teams, and then adding value to our email list with a weekly newsletter.
So when you write these articles, do you then promote them in any way? Do you send them to your email list? Do you just put them on the blog, and like, what do you do specifically?
So if I think about, what's our content strategy? So at the beginning of each quarter, we prepare a content strategy. So we do a lot of keyword research around what do we want to rank for in Google. And then we look at what search terms have high volume, and also how competitive are they? Because if it's got high volume, but we've got no chance of ranking on page one, then it's probably not the right keyword for us. So we do that analysis. And then based on that, we figure out a list of articles that we're going to write. And then we write long form guides. And then we also try and do a lot of guest posts where we can link back to the articles that our guides on other websites. So that's part of the core part of the strategy. We also promote new articles to our email list, and then we're quite active on social media. So I aim to write a LinkedIn post most days, and my business partner and others in our team, normally we'd have at least me and someone else posting every day on LinkedIn. And we also are on Twitter, less so. I'm trying to up my Twitter game.
Oh, good on you, good on you. So is there a tool that you use to do the keyword research?
We use Ahrefs. Yeah, they have a lot of SEO training. I mean, we use Google Analytics as well. So Google Analytics and Ahrefs.
Nice.
Ahrefs. Different people say it different ways.
Nice. Thank you for sharing. Excellent. Okay, so tell us about recruiting the team. So how did you go about recruiting your team? Was it your first experience in recruitment and managing a team? Just tell us a little bit about that team journey.
So before starting Bean Ninjas, I had hired people, but not many. And when I worked as an employee, I worked with staff, but I wasn't involved in recruiting them. So I was managing people that other people had hired. I wasn't building teams from scratch. And the way that we approached it was I wanted to remove myself from every seat in the business. So if you look at an organizational chart, my goal from day one, from starting the business, was that I didn't want my name to be in the bookkeeping, doing the bookkeeping service delivery. I didn't want to be doing onboarding. I didn't want to be doing sales. But in the beginning, my name was in every box. It was me or my co-founder. And so from there, we actually worked on service delivery first, so hiring bookkeepers. And then we built a management layer within the bookkeeping team, and then gradually focused on other areas of the business to eventually, just before my daughter was born a few years ago, I was able to have my name just in that CEO box. There's nothing like a deadline, knowing that with
Yes,
the birth of a child.
A child deadline, they are very, very hard deadlines. I like that a lot.
Yeah, so I mean, there's probably elements of that I can go into if you'd like, but that was the general approach.
Yeah, give us a bit of detail around what you just said. And then how did you set up the processes and procedures within the business to guide the management of that team?
So if I talk first about how we were building the bookkeeping team, I'll talk a little bit about finance too. So I'm an accountant, so I like thinking about the financial side of things. But we were a bootstrap business. And in those early years, every dollar that we wanted to spend on software or on a team member, we had to earn first. And so it was quite a slow process in building our team. And we couldn't hire full-time accountants in the beginning. So we had to work with part-time and contract accountants. And we ended up with something like 10 and then hit a tipping point. So it was quite hard managing 10 different part-time contract bookkeepers, all working different hours, all working different schedules. And training was becoming difficult. It was difficult having management structures in place when the managers are working different hours to the bookkeeper. So we really hit a lot of pain. That was about the 2-year mark of the business, where we'd grown really quickly. We had lots of new customers. We'd hired lots of people. And then our quality was going down. Our bookkeepers weren't happy and thought, okay, we really need to do something. And there was a couple of changes that we made at that point. And one was to reduce the number of staff that we had, but to hire full-time people, not have so many contractors and part-time staff where we weren't their number one focus. And that was a game changer for us, but we couldn't have done it earlier because we didn't have the resources to do that. So that was really important in beginning the establishment of a leadership team. And we wanted to have senior people within the business who were running a department and thinking about that. And we refer to it as shower time. So we wanted the key people in our business, when they're in the shower, we wanted them thinking about our business, not their side hustle or something else. And to do that, we needed to find the right people, but we also needed to look after them and create the right environment, right remuneration for them. And so we started down that path of building a management team about 2 years into the business, and we started in the bookkeeping area. And then gradually we built that out and hired an operations manager, which was another game changer in terms of taking a lot off my plate. So if I reflect on that story, the transition from using contractors to full-time employees was important, and then hiring people that were wanting leadership roles and wanted to step up and act almost like owners in the business. I don't think you'll ever fully get that.
Mm-mm.
And this was back in the day pre-COVID, when remote work was less common. And so that was something that we thought about as something that we could offer was a bit different, was flexible work, remote work. And we actually had a lot of working or mothers that wanted to work, but also needed flexibility. So that was part of our recruitment process at the time. But we're probably not unique in that now. I think everybody's been forced to create more flexible work environments.
Yeah. So you went from 10 part-time to how many full-time?
It was a gradual transition because we couldn't, so it was just we went to one full-time and then gradually reduced part-time, and then we hired another full-time team member. And then eventually we decided to build a team in the Philippines. And we've got 6 team members now in the Philippines and reporting into a manager. But again, all of that, it was all gradual. As a bootstrap business with cash flow constraints, it's hard to, we couldn't just say we'll hire 3 full-time people. We'll hire 1, see how that goes, and then gradually build out the team that way.
So tell me more about hiring the team in the Philippines. What brought you to that decision?
In the first year of the business, we actually had 2 team members in India, and I'd actually been to India the year prior with my consulting business and met some accountants over there and built relationships, and it did not work. And the reason for that was because we didn't have the right systems and processes. So we were trying to hand over work to our accountants in India, and we didn't have checklists. We didn't have standardized ways of doing things. And so it was a complete failure. And we scrapped that within a couple of months, and then went the higher local route. And over a period of years, we really refined our systems, checklists, the way that we did everything became standardized, which is the goal when you're running a productized service. And we put a lot of time and effort into that. And I'd say we have over 100 procedures now documented in our InSuite process, which is the tool that we use for our training videos and procedures. So having that meant that we were then able to hire test hiring in the Philippines, knowing that there were really clear procedures, the right guardrails in place to make sure that quality was high, and also that we had the right review process, and that our Australian team actually had time to do the quality review and training that was needed. So similar approach, we just tried it, tested it out with 1 team member, gradually assessed how that went, and then over time continued to hire over there. And that's been really helpful for us in, again, building out a full-time team. So all of our team are working 40 hours a week with us, and we're the primary focus, which really helps in running a service business.
Yeah, that's absolutely excellent. So tell us a couple of what not to do's.
Well, I mean, there's lots. I can think about some of the changes that we made last year during the pandemic. So I think one of the challenges that many entrepreneurs have is that they've got lots of different ideas. They're always getting great ideas, and it's easy to lose focus. And I think that concentrating on what's working and continuing to keep on marching in that direction is really important. And I've got some examples of that. We went down the online courses route. I could see that having digital products and doing group coaching was more scalable than running a service business. And so I invested quite a lot of time and money into building online courses. And then we'd been working on a 2-month launch, which hit. Our launch week was right when the pandemic hit Australia. So that fell flat. That probably wasn't the only reason. I'd say our launch, in hindsight, could have been better. But really, that was a distraction from our core business, which was bookkeeping and now accounting. And so I really should have been focused more on what our ideal customers needed. And it wasn't a course that they needed, or we didn't create the right course. And so that was really a distraction from what our core business was.
So how did you, and I'm interested in this because I think that there is a lot of marketing online. There are a lot of gurus trying to tell everyone that what they need is to sell information. And it is as simple as putting a course together, taking what you know, putting it together, putting it on one of the platforms, and off you go. You're going to make a lot of money. So tell me a little bit about what course you did create and what course in hindsight you think you should have created, if any.
So I created 2 courses, and the first one was a how to do bookkeeping course. It was teaching someone the mechanics of how you use Xero and how you would go in, and also it had templates around procedures. So if you're doing payroll, then here's a template, or if you're doing an accounts payable run to pay bills, here's a checklist and a procedures template, and then here's videos on how to do it. So in theory, I thought that someone would do that course and then they think, wow, there's a lot more to bookkeeping than I originally thought. I don't want to do this myself. I'll pay you to do it. But I realized it was actually quite a different customer segment. The people that were paying to do an online course to learn how to do bookkeeping were not in the financial position to afford our bookkeeping fees. So we didn't have the crossover wasn't there. And the people on our email list were people that were at a later stage in business, and so weren't really interested in buying that course. And then the second course was around understanding numbers. So it's called Know Your Numbers, which is to teach founders or business owners, what are the key numbers in your business? How do you read a profit and loss? What does it actually mean? And so we'd go through examples and case studies of that. What other reports should you be looking at? How do you build a cash flow forecast? I'm proud of the content in that course. I think it was really valuable content that every business owner should know, basic financial literacy skills. But again, we didn't have the right sales process, the right marketing material. We didn't really know how to sell courses. It's quite different selling information to selling services. And we didn't have that skill set, and we didn't have an audience of people interested in that. So it wasn't a complete waste of time, because I do think there's value in that information. And during the pandemic, we really thought through our business and thought through who are our key customers, where do we add the most value, who are our most, not only who are our most profitable customers, but who do we like working with. And we realized that it was e-commerce businesses. And so during the last year, during the lockdowns, we really repositioned the business to focus on that market segment. And I can see that we can now repurpose the course. And instead of Know Your Numbers, which is a general business or general financial literacy course, it needs to be Know Your Numbers for e-commerce. And then it's super specific. And then it's solving clear pain points. It's Know Your Numbers for 7-figure e-commerce businesses. So that's actually something that we're working on. We're in the process of writing an ebook, which is a playbook for e-commerce accounting. And then we're going to redo the course based on the book. So it wasn't a complete waste of time, but in hindsight, it was a distraction from me focusing on our core business.
I almost feel like saying that course might be an absolutely great lead gen for you, but then not in e-commerce specifically. I think if you just put that out there, even on LinkedIn, and you gave people free access, that would be a great lead gen. But anyway, off topic. Okay, so thank you for sharing that with us. So you said something just before that I think is absolutely key, and that is you examined your business. And I think that, I think it's Socrates that said, a life unexamined is a life not worth living. And I think that's true for a business too. Like so many business owners don't actually pull their businesses apart and look at every single part of their business and look at how to do things better. Can you take us through that process? So how do you go about examining your business?
I think the hard part is carving out the time to do it. So it's not a half an hour process. It takes more uninterrupted time. It takes a chunk of time away from the day-to-day. You can't have clients or team members pinging you needing something urgently. So it requires a chunk of time where you can reflect and think. And I see that as a challenge that many service businesses have, is that the founder is scrambling and rushing and fighting fires instead of carving out time to do the important but not urgent work. If we think of I forget the name of that matrix, but they're too busy doing the urgent work. And I see reflecting as something that's super important. And one of my friends, a guy that I'm in a mastermind with, he actually carves out a week every quarter, which is called a think week. So he takes no meetings, he's off email, off Slack for the week, and it's strategy and reflection. Now, I can't quite take a week off, and I don't think my partner would love it with a little toddler if I went away for a week every quarter on my own, but I do my own version of that. And I try and take one night, so 2 days a quarter, and use that time to reflect and really think about where I want to be personally, where I want the business to be, and then dig into some of the things, the numbers, look at customers, look at where are we acquiring customers? Are we losing money on some customers? Are some more profitable? And really reflect. If I go back to the example of where we made big business changes last year, that was probably over a period of 3 weeks. So we realized, right, the world is in a state of flux. We need to act quickly. And typical accountants, we did a financial model and we looked at 3 scenarios. So we said, this is what we think is the best case. This is the worst case. And we predicted our worst case would be if we lost 50% of our revenue. And then we said, and this is what we think the likely case is. And then we got into the nitty-gritty of the numbers and thought about what would the business look like if we lost 50% of our revenue. Then what would we need to do to make sure we could survive, and that we had a team and we had a business on the other side. And we didn't know what that would be back then. Is that 6 months? Is that 12 months? And so we made some tough changes, and that included stopping the focus on courses. It meant we had a podcast, we cut the podcast. We had to make some restructures in our team just to make sure that we had the cash flow to ride out whatever was ahead. And to build all of those financial models, we had to think about what assumptions we wanted to put into them, dig into who's on our customer list, really dig into all areas of the business. And my business partner and I are in different time zones, but we were on calls almost every day during that period just to really figure it out and just make the hard decisions quickly.
So talk to us about making hard decisions. I think that's one of the greatest challenges that we have as business owners, even just in the decision to go from a service-based business to a product-based business and actually closing the one thing down and starting a new thing. That's a hard decision to make. The same thing when you're in a business and you have to examine things and then make some hard decisions. Tell me about the process that you use to make decisions, and how do you make yourself feel comfortable through those decisions?
It's interesting. It depends on what the decision is, but I do try. So I think that gut feel actually is important, and I do consider that. I also like to put numbers around things. So if I was weighing up a series of priorities so most CEOs or business owners' decisions are really about resource allocation. So where are you going to reallocate scarce resources, which are time or money? And then what kind of return on investment do you want from that, or do you expect to get? So if it's a prioritization, resource allocation decision, I'd put it in a spreadsheet and weigh up the likelihood of something happening, the resources required, and then the return on investment. So that's a very accounting way of looking at it. But a lot of business decisions also relate to people or emotion or things that are harder to measure or that may be difficult to put numbers around. So if it was something like a marketing experiment, then I try and test things gradually. So in startup methodology, you'll try and create an MVP of something, and then you'll test and iterate. So you'll learn from the experiment, and then you'll adapt course slightly. And that's actually how I like to do things. So I think moving fast in business is super important. So so if I was taking that example, going from a service to a product business, I think about, okay, I'm going to we actually did this with Bean Ninjas over a period of 5 weeks. We worked in public, my business partner and I. And so how do we create a product in a week? Well, we have to create a minimum viable product. If we have to get to the core of it and cut everything, how can we come up with some kind of product in a week? And that's how I would start. And then I'd try and sell it and get feedback from customers. And then I'd iterate. But I think, getting feedback from paying customers is important, and moving quickly is important. So I would keep on doing that iteration process until I'd built up enough knowledge or confidence to then again gradually transition to the products. So that's how I do it. And I guess that's the way I transition from being an employee to consulting. Starting Bean Ninjas, I didn't completely stop the consulting. I just scaled it down as the productized service grew. So it's probably, maybe that's more risk averse than just saying, hey, I'm going all in on products. But when you're a bootstrapper, you've got to protect cash flow. So that's how I would do it.
Yeah, Awesome, awesome. I just want to take a moment and say a big hello to Lita, to Lucas, to Craig, to Chelsea. Thank you so much for joining us today. I'm here with the amazing Meryl from Bean Ninjas, and we're talking about how to turn a service into a product and how to free yourself from being the person who works in your business to truly being the business owner. And we've shared some amazing insights already. If you've missed any of it, I would highly recommend that you go back and watch the live after. But if you have any questions for Meryl, please feel free to pop those in the chat, and I'm sure we'll try to answer those questions. So tell us about, so I really like that framework, because what you just explained around decision making and around moving from one thing to the next thing is move in small increments and have a structure to make decisions. Basically, if you're thinking about allocating resources, do that in a structured way, and everything else just move in little increments and test and measure all the time so that you can take the feedback. And you mentioned about almost like being in touch with your customers all the time and getting their feedback. Do you have a mechanism or a process that you use to ensure that that happens?
So when we were smaller, I actually knew most of our customers. And so even though I wasn't handling their accounts, I would meet them at conferences. I'd be in Facebook groups with them. So I might catch up for coffee. And so it was easy for me. I could just ask, how are things going? Are you happy? Is there anything we could do better? I'd often ask that question, is there anything we could do better, or anything that would make you more happy with what we're doing? But over time, so it was easy in the early days, because I just knew that information without having to have a process. But now we're much bigger, and I don't have those same, there's lots of customers I've never met, never interacted with. And so there we needed to put a system in place for that. So we have account managers, and depending on the package that someone has with us, then there's a check-in frequency. And so we have what we call a gap analysis call, which might be once a quarter, our goal as accountants is to help our clients achieve their goals. And so we'll sit down and have a chat there, but also see if there are things we can do better, or things that is there anything we can do to make their life easier? We also send out, so NPS is a net promoter score. And so we use that tool as an easy way to get to receive feedback. So if someone's really unhappy with us, then they could give us a 2 and say the reason. And we think, okay, we really need to get on a call with this person and understand what's happened. And on the flip side, it's really nice to share wins with our team. If we're regularly getting 10 out of 10 and nice comments, then that's something we share in our team Slack channel, in our wins and gratitude channel, so that we can feed that back to the team that they're doing great work.
That's cool. So tell me about the Slack channel. Tell me about how you communicate with your team and those channels that you have set up. So Slack, email, what do you use, and how do you use those channels?
Internally, we use Slack. So that's for our team communication. And for client communication, we use a tool called Help Scout. So we have one email address, and all client emails go into that. And then we use the help desk software. So, and that means that we can be across all conversations. So if I ever wanted to see where something was at, or what we've said to a client, then me and anyone else that has access to that client in the help desk system can go and review all of that information. So that's really helpful. Within Slack, we have channels set up for every client, so the right people are all across all of the communication. And then we've got fun channels. So we have the wins and gratitude channel. We have a daily huddle where all of us are sharing our daily, it sounds a bit silly, but our daily gratitude, what our most important thing that we achieved yesterday, most important thing for today. And some people share affirmations, some don't. We have a random channel, which is for photos and funny things. I guess we work pretty hard to try and build team culture, because we're in 6 different countries, all different time zones. How do we actually get to know as people? How do we get to know the team as people? We've got quite a lot of different channels. Like there's an internal finance for our accounts. I could go up, but Slack is a common tool. And we also use Loom. I'm a really big fan of what's called asynchronous communication. And there's a Basecamp masterpiece article about the benefits of that. What asynchronous communication means is, say we were in different time zones and we were collaborating on an article, I would write my thoughts, or I would record a video for you, and we would go backwards and forwards like that not necessarily having to be on a call at the same time. And I find that's super helpful for time zones, but actually I like it because it forces someone to clarify their thoughts, or it forces me to clarify my thoughts. And I use Loom, which is a video recording tool, a lot. And so I'll record a 2-minute or a 3-minute video, and I'll get a 2-minute video back instead of sitting in a meeting for 40 minutes to have achieved the same thing. So I'm a massive Loom fan. I'm creating videos for my team all the time.
Oh, that's brilliant. That's really, really cool. So team culture, I want to get back to that, but I have a quick question. Have you actually met your team, everyone face to face, or some people you've never met face to face?
So I should have met everyone face to face, because we had a team retreat that was planned last year in March in the Philippines, which was to bring the entire team together. Obviously that was cancelled. So I haven't met our Philippines team. We did do a team retreat on the Gold Coast in 2019 where the leadership team all flew in. And so that was amazing. And outside of that, I've met different team members. So I've been over to America. My business partner's been here a couple of times. Our UK director's been to Australia a couple of times. So I've met the key people in the business, but I haven't met everyone, and I want to meet everyone. So hopefully when things open back up, we will be able to do that.
That's awesome. So obviously your team is international. They're everywhere. Tell me about your customer base. Now we'll come back to the team culture. Is your customer base global?
We're in 3 markets, Australia, the US, and UK. And it's funny, we started with the idea of being a global business, but we thought, probably the first 5 years it'll be Australia, and then maybe we'll look at expanding overseas. And it didn't work out that way. We actually had enough referrals to start the business in the US within the first year. And now that's our biggest market. So it's been quite interesting. We're a little accounting business that started on the Gold Coast in Australia, and we're competing in the US. I'll go off on a little tangent, but with Google Ads, sometimes people can bid on, or sometimes it's not really best practice, but we had a competitor bidding on our name, Bean Ninjas, and we were a bit annoyed about it. But also it was quite flattering that one of the big e-commerce accounting firms in America picked us as a threat or someone to target. So if someone searched Bean Ninjas, it would come up as them best Bean Ninjas alternative. And so we thought, it's funny that they're spending money on that, and annoying if one of our potential customers goes with them, but also interesting that they've picked a little Australian business to do that too.
That's really amazing. Yeah, it is. So tell me, your business partner, is he Australian or is he abroad? Like, how did you meet your business partner, and how did you decide that that was the right thing to go into business with him or her?
So I started the business with an accountant based in Sydney, and that didn't work out. So I bought his share of the business after the first 18 months. And I swore after that I'd never have another business partner again. And then a year later, or it was probably a bit longer than that, 2 years later, I had a business partner in America called Wayne. And we're still working together now, and that's been fantastic. And really, he's really driven a lot of our growth in America. And I wasn't really expecting that it would work out with him. He actually was running his own bookkeeping business, and applied for a bookkeeping job with us. I said, hang on a minute, what are you doing? Why are you applying for a bookkeeping job? You already own your own business. And so the conversation started from there, and I realized he's actually a great fit, really good cultural fit. He had a really big vision like we did, and that's been great. So he's my core business partner. And then I also have a business partner who runs the UK part of our business. And his was a bit of a different story. He started as a young accountant with us. He was one of our first hires, and he's based in Manchester, and he just worked his way up through all different parts of the business. And just last year, he took over Bean Ninjas Europe, which was, I think, a great story for him to have proved himself and worked his way up.
Oh, that's brilliant. So tell us about this culture, the culture in your business that you've been referring to.
So culture was important. Well, it is still important to us. And it's something I think you have to be more proactive about it as a remote team, because if you're in an office, then the culture can just evolve because you're you're chatting with each other every day. You might go for Friday night drinks. You might have lunch together. And so those friendships and those bonds, but also just the cultural norms of what's accepted, what's not. You can learn that much more easily. And as a leader, I think it's easier in those situations. So we didn't have that as a remote team. So we had to think about it more. Well, how do we encourage our team members to build relationships? How do we make sure that when someone new joins the business, that they don't feel isolated? And so we put things in place like an onboarding process for new employees and buddies. So they have a one-on-one buddy that can help them along the way. And things like development plans and talking about careers, lunch and learns, just trying to create opportunities where the team members are coming together and not always talking about work, that they can have some fun. So, for example, Christmas, we did a Zoom Christmas party and would playing some games and just trying to relax and have fun as you would in a physical environment.
That's awesome.
And nothing beats in person. So we in the past, we always used to do in-person meetups as well, but that's on hold.
Yeah, understandably. Okay, well, we're coming to the end of our time together. We've been going for 41 minutes. So we have 4 or so minutes left. Can you share with us what you would consider the most valuable information, insights, lessons, or rules that you think someone who wants to transition from service to product based, or just someone who's looking to build their business, should follow?
If I answer that from a general perspective, I think it's really important to get clear about your personal goals first, because it's easy to see other entrepreneurs, they're building this amazing tech business. It's going to be a unicorn. They're going to go to Silicon Valley, and that might not actually be the right fit for you or even be what you want. But I see in business circles that there's pressure to grow revenue. There's pressure to build the next big thing or to have a tech startup. And that's not always the best thing for each. It should be individual about building a business that really fits with what you actually want. And I don't think you can do that unless you actually get clear about what you want. And so I think that's important to think about. What would your perfect day look like in 10 years' time? How would you spend that time? Who would you be with? What would you be doing? What kind of work do you like? What does financial freedom mean to you? And putting in place all of that, but getting really clear about it. Because if you're clear, then it's easy to say no to things too. And it's easy to say, no, I don't need more customers. I don't need more revenue because I'm already living that lifestyle that I want. Or no, that's not a market I want to go into because that's not the kind of work that I like doing. So I guess that's fairly broad and not necessarily answering the service to product question, but that's how I would start, is get clear about personal goals and then build a business around that.
Yeah, I think that's extremely insightful. I think a lot of people build businesses that they think they should build, as opposed to businesses that really work with their own individual situation, strengths and weaknesses, and kind of build a business around who you are, so that you don't get sick of your business. Because we see that happening too. People build very successful businesses, but they don't enjoy working on or in those businesses. And then that's a bit of a shame.
Yeah. And then I'll tie that back into our topic. And so for me, I really wanted to run a service business where I wasn't doing the delivery. And that was something that I strive for and spent 5 years working to almost 5 years working towards. But that all aligned with the goals and how I wanted to spend my time and where I wanted to be financially. But I know lots of people that actually do love their craft as well. And they love copywriting or they love taking photographs. And so for me, the right path was building a productized service. And it might well be the right path for other people. But I also think that it's fine that if you love actually doing the copywriting, then keep doing that. And you can still build a business around that as well.
Yeah, just follow what suits you. Yeah, and do that well. Excellent. Meryl, you have been marvelous today. Thank you so much for sharing all your information, all your insights, your experience, and your wonderful stories with us. It's been absolutely wonderful. If people want to get in contact with you, how can they do that?
I'm pretty active on LinkedIn and I'm Meryl Johnston there. So I'll share the URL with you.
Brilliant. Thank you so much. And thank you so much for joining us for today's Hub Live. We will be back in a couple of weeks. We're doing fortnightly Hub Lives this year. So also, if you have any suggestions for topics that you'd like us to cover on these Hub Lives, please get in contact. Please message us, private message us on the Smart Hub page. And if you have any questions or comments, please feel free to post those as well. We look forward to seeing you in a couple of weeks. Take care. Bye.